Nurse Ratched is formidable, cunning, manipulative, cold-blooded, and willing to do whatever it takes to get her way. You wouldn't want her as an enemy, but what if she was? Let's break down how to kill Nurse Ratched. We open up in 1947, where a group of priests come back home to get chased and killed by one man who takes special pleasure in killing Father Monsignor, his actual father who raped his mom years ago. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this guy might have deserved it. The only one who survives among them is Father Andrews, who watches this man kill the pastor. 6 months later, Mildred Ratched checks in at the Sea Light Inn before heading to the Lucia State Hospital for an interview with Dr. Hanover. She butts heads with head nurse Betsy Bucket. She's right to be suspicious of Mildred, who insists on meeting Hanover. Mildred is finally able to talk to Dr. Hanover, who confirms that he did not schedule an appointment with the woman, but is impressed by her. She was an army nurse back in the Pacific Theater in World War II and has tons of experience in all manner of things. Okay, already we've got a stupid mistake. When a woman fakes an appointment and her resume sounds too good to be true, it's probably because it is. He should be verifying her account to even consider her coming to work at the hospital. He doesn't, and it will definitely come back to haunt him. Back at the motel, Mildred bumps into a man, and she slips a note underneath his door for a night of passion, but it's actually this weird role-playing thing. No touching, no petting. Mildred just wants to pretend they're a married couple getting into an argument. Okay, this woman is bad crazy. This is both her strength and her weakness. She's crazy enough to do things no one else would do, but it's also a place to manipulate her as well. She can be discredited if her psychosis is revealed, giving you the upper hand and stripping her of her power. The governor's secretary, Gwen, visits Dr. Hanover that night and lays down a pitch for his hospital. Since the clergy killer, Edmund Tillotson, is being moved here to Lucia, if Hanover can prove him to be mentally fit for execution, then the governor is sure to fund the hospital. Nurse Bucket prepares her staff for today's visit by the governor, having them humanely tame and tranquilize the patients. Nurses are tough. If they say you're acting up, they'll drug you, or confine you, or even lobotomize you. You have no power, so you're not going to win at her game. Your best chance at taking advantage of this power dynamic is to find a way to make Ratched a patient of the hospital, so that your actions aren't questioned and she won't be able to resist, giving you full control to end her life. Dr. Hanover takes the governor on a tour, and that's when Nurse Bucket calls for help, as Father Murphy has collapsed on the ground, but as Nurse Bucket observes, he almost died from low blood pressure, which she suspects was caused by someone giving Father Murphy the wrong medication. Later, Mildred finds out that one of the patients, Mr. Salvatore, has been hospitalized here since his brother died. She tells Salvatore that his family doesn't want him out, and understands how he feels since she too lost a brother who was taken away from her years ago. She brings Salvatore to Hanover's office, where he uses a letter opener to kill himself. Dr. Hanover hears a thud in his office. He finds the dead body of Salvatore in his bathroom and freaks out since, with this death, he's ruined. The governor will never fund this place. But Mildred very calmly tells him what to do. Okay, see here? She's already got this entire place wrapped around her finger. If you let her dig in too deep, you'll end up fired, in jail, or even dead. Now should already be the time to begin planning a way to kill Nurse Mildred Ratched. She's clearly devious, which means she will be constantly on the move, putting her plans in action. Hanover's best chance is to ask Nurse Bucket to note where Ratched goes and who she talks to. Even if you don't catch a murderer, her movements will be suspicious enough for questioning. She'll get desperate and show her hand. While he goes off to schmooze and talk to the governor, Ratched burns the body inside the incinerator. Later that night, Nurse Ratched visits Edmund Tillotson in his cell, and they recognize each other, and she promises to him she will make sure he won't be executed. The next day, down below in the lobby, Peter, Lily, Ingrid, and Len are 4 patients waiting to be cured of their illnesses through Dr. Hanover's new revolutionary procedure, the lobotomy. The audience is horrified as they see the grisly work being done by Dr. Hanover, but Nurse Ratched is very interested in the procedure. This is the earliest sign to any observer that something is definitely wrong with her. Someone like Nurse Bucket should have noticed this to further arouse her suspicions. On their lunch break, Ratched and Bucket butt heads over a stolen peach for lunch, and Mildred threatens the head nurse for being an unrepentant coworker. Bucket is asking for it. She clearly doesn't know her opponent. And all over a peach, lines are being drawn here. So now Nurse Bucket needs a strategy to get revenge. And for God's sakes, it needs to be a lot better than just eating her peach. Maybe a peach injected with sodium pentothal to knock her out and get to the truth. There will be plenty in the hospital, and we know she likes peaches. Ratched gets invited to go to an oyster bar with Gwen, just the two of them. There's clear hints that Gwen and Mildred are attracted to each other, and Gwen actually takes her into the woods to this quaint little bar filled with lesbians. And Mildred isn't into this, or so she says. Dr. Hanover meets Edmund, who he realizes is faking schizophrenia, and makes sure that Edmund knows he wants to help him, reassuring him that he doesn't want him to be executed. Wow, Edmund is freaking smart, but Hanover is smarter. If there's anyone that could outmaneuver these psycho siblings, it might be him. Later, she visits Father Andrews, the sole survivor of Edmund's killing, and convinces him to be interviewed so that he can know what he went through. She meets up with Father Andrews inside a hotel room where she has set up a recorder, and as he's talking, drugs his cup of tea as he continues to explain that he would recognize Edmund's face if he saw him. He finishes drinking the tea and becomes weak, blacking out. When he comes to, he finds himself locked to the headboard, and he can do nothing to stop Ratched from giving him a lobotomy. At this point, we can see just how vicious and twisted Ratched is, and how far she's willing to go to protect her brother. We need to match her brutality, because if a situation comes down to us or her brother, you better believe we're next on the table. We need to be able to flip her plans on their head. Knowing her usual day-to-day routine is crucial to this, as you'll know when something strange has happened if you don't see her either at the motel or the hospital. The man who's been spying on Dr. Hanover comes to the lavish home of Lenore Osgood, and we find out this man, Charles Wainwright, is a hitman hired to kill Dr. Manuel Banyaga, the real name of Dr. Hanover, who did something to her son that has made Lenore so upset that she wants to give her son his head for his 21st birthday. At a gas station, Dr. Hanover almost gets killed by Charles, who's intent on getting paid, but he misses and has to chase after Hanover in his car. With a good doctor on the run, Charles returns to the motel and has another roleplay session with Mildred, whose fantasy tonight is getting down and dirty with an injured Marine. The hitman should realize that Ratched is aroused by scenarios that involve torture and punishment. A curious man might find that she works at the mental facility, is a sexual deviant, for which the treatment is lobotomy and hydrotherapy. Either one could end in her death if he had help from someone in the hospital, or at least give him blackmail over her if the need arose. The next morning, Dr. Hanover is asked by Nurse Bucket where Mr. Salvatore has gone, and he starts sweating bullets until Ratched pops in to distract her. She invites him to have dinner at the oyster bar and finds out why he's being followed. Hanover confesses that years ago he helped treat a rich woman's son who was completely deranged. Hanover tried to help him, proposing to treat her son Henry with lysergic acid, but then as he was distracted, Henry poured the entire bottle of acid in his cup, and Hanover became super blazed. After disappearing, the kid comes back with a pair of arms that he wants to stitch onto himself. And like something out of a nightmare, Hanover stitched the arms onto the stumps, finding out later that the kid's arms and legs had to be chopped off after they got infected. And it's because of this that Mrs. Osgood wants him dead. Back at Lucia Hospital, down in his cell, Dolly delivers food to Edmund and gets a little handsy with the man. Word of this gets to Mildred, who talks to Dolly and tells her outright that she's a nymphomaniac. She's got urges that need to be fulfilled, but there's only one guy who can do that. She pitches a plan to her that has Dolly meeting up with Edmund in the shower room at 2:05. They'll have plenty of time to get it on, given that Bucket will be on her break during that time. Back at the motel, she asks Charles why he's after Dr. Hanover and offers to help, telling Charles that she'll have him in his office at Lucia. At this point, if he was halfway decent at his job, Charles should already know not to trust her, so when she invites to help him kill Hanover, he should play along, but expect foul play from Ratched. In fact, I would have killed her right now, because she knows way too much. Entering the hospital, she finds that Hanover has knocked Charles out with an ashtray, and together they lock him inside the hot bath and boil him alive. But Harold the Night Guard spots Charles as he grabs his gun and shoots Charles before he gets too close. Gwen, Hanover, and Mildred find the dead body and agree to keep this hush-hush, burning Charles's body and belongings in the incinerator. Anytime you and her are in the incinerator room is a time that she could be killed. You could take that stool over there and knock her out using it before putting her in the incinerator proper. This disposes the evidence which could otherwise lead back to you if it's found. Mildred heads back to the motel, breaking into Charles's room with his key, and finds files on Dr. Hanover, a check for $50,000, and a book with Lenore Osgood's number at the back. She calls the woman, telling her Charles is dead, and invites her to come stay in town. The next day, Hanover meets Mildred at a restaurant and is blackmailed into helping her make sure that Edmund does not get executed, as well as electing her as head nurse and demoting Nurse Bucket. Ratched is the queen of blackmail. You must realize by now that she has to go, and there's no pleasant way to do that. I would slip lysergic acid into her drink at the hospital. She would begin acting crazy, so I would have her admitted where I could microdose her every day and slowly kill her under my control. Now in a position of power, Mildred plans on hosting a dance next Thursday with the staff and patients, which is all a ruse so that Edmund can throw a scene there, where he'll make sure everyone thinks he's crazy, slitting his wrists with a razor and speaking in tongues. Later that day, Charlotte Wells is admitted to the hospital, a woman who's been having lapses in her memory and, as we discover, has multiple personality disorder with 3 alters. She's the perfect patient that Ratched believes will make the governor totally forget about Edmund so long as she's cured. The next day, Mrs. Lenore Osgood arrives in town and invites Mildred to her hotel, where Ratched tells her she knows about Henry. Mildred then cuts a deal with Osgood. She'll kill Hanover for $100,000. Back at the hospital, Hanover tries to hypnotize Charlotte Wells. He's able to cure her of her alters and finds out the source of her trauma. Louise the concierge visits Nurse Bucket, and together they hatch a scheme. While Hanover and her are at the dance, Louise will break into Mildred's room and find whatever dirty secret she can get her hands on. Finally, someone has the balls to investigate Ratched. This is a good plan. There's a distraction, there's predictable scheduling, it's great. But there's more they could do, hunting evidence to get into more trouble to use to their advantage later on. Thursday night comes and the party is in full swing. Nurse Bucket dances with Hanover, who gets really into it after shooting up. Gwen comes to chaperone Mildred, and finally Edmund arrives at the party and slowly dances in the light with Dolly, who has her own plan. Mildred signals for Edmund to prove he's crazy, but things don't go according to plan. He takes a razor blade, he slits Harold's throat, killing him, as Dolly grabs the guard's gun and shoots Gwen. Now there's a gun involved. Obviously great for killing, but using it yourself is stupid. Now she's culpable for murder, so find your most violent patient, give them the gun, and point them in the direction of your enemy. As a statewide manhunt begins for the 2 youngsters, they hide out in an abandoned house, where Dolly finds a shotgun and the 2 sleep in the barn. The cops finally catch up to Edmund, surrounding the barn they're hiding in, and Edmund walks out of the barn, surrendering to the cops, only for Dolly to come out, firing her shotgun at the cops, who shoot back, killing her and arresting Edmund, who's dragged back in chains to Lucia. Later, the governor forces Hanover to sign the release that will let Edmund be executed, withholding funding for Lucia otherwise. The thing is, that's a lie. The governor has already pulled the funding and fires Gwen, so not only is the hospital going to be shut down, but Edmund is going to be killed. Louise meets up with Nurse Bucket with stuff she found in Mildred's room, various newspaper clippings on the clergy killer, Charles's case files on Dr. Hanover, and the recorder she used to interview Father Andrews that still has the recording, including all the grisly details. In her motel room, Nurse Bucket tells Mildred she knows about her brother Edmund, who plans to save him, and if Ratched thinks about killing her, a friend will leak all his evidence to the police. She also knows that Ratched wasn't even a nurse. She lied about her training, and once she got back stateside, forged Dr. Hanover's letter to apply to Lucia. Sometimes it takes one psycho to catch another. These 2 women are ridiculous, and yet they're the only ones on to Mildred Ratched. The mistake? To confront her about it. It only invites lies or retaliation. What they should have done was take it to the hospital, and then the police. Betsy Bucket is moved by her story, and has her join in on a plan. The next day, they visit a woman to ask for funding for the hospital. Mildred tells her the truth about Dr. Hanover and what he did to Henry Osgood. With that sorted, Betsy Bucket becomes the interim head, which she is more than happy to rub in Dr. Hanover's face. Now, before he leaves, he takes Charlotte, the woman with the multiple personalities. At this point, if there's anyone that wants to kill Ratched, it's Hanover. He's already crossed several ethical boundaries, but don't kill yourself. That's messy and stressful. I would tell Charlotte Wells that Ratched was Adolf Hitler and wanted to kill her, because aside from Edmund, she's the most prolific killer of them all, or at least the most violent patient. If I regularly hypnotized her, reinforcing that thought, she might attack Ratched and kill her for me. They go to their hotel room to rest, but Charlotte has to hide as the police come knocking. Hanover forces Charlotte to get up and pushes her into the closet before sorting things out with the police, and when he opens the door, Charlotte's alters return to protect her, and Apollo locks the front door before he stabs Dr. Hanover to death. Mildred heads over to the hotel after getting a call from Charlotte, who's confused and scared. She doesn't remember killing Hanover. The next day, she visits Lenore Osgood at her mansion and hands over a hat box with the head of Dr. Hanover. Lenore is ecstatic. She hands over the check to Mildred before taking the head to Henry, who has her killed by a manservant. 1 month later, Mildred finds out that the governor has no intention of using lethal injection to kill Edmund. Instead, he wants to use the electric chair. All of this to look good for his re-election campaign. So they come up with a different plan with Betsy's help. Before Edmund is to be executed, they'll take him into the barn after making sure none of the guards are there. Mildred will go with him to see these animals that he likes so much before Huck will come along and inject them with a sedative, letting Mildred the chance to inject them lethally herself. On the other hand, this is a wooden barn, making it very flammable. Lock Nurse Ratched and Edmund inside and have them die either from smoke inhalation or the flames themselves. On her way back to her office, Betsy finds out that an old friend has come back, Charlotte, with an entirely new alter that believes it is Dr. Hanover. She rifles through the desk to collect her things and finds the revolver that Dr. Hanover took off of Charles. When Betsy comes back with Huck, Charlotte shoots Huck dead and has Betsy take them to see Edmund, who she believes she can cure. She kills another man and has Betsy unlock his cell. He takes the guard's rifle and interrogates Betsy at gunpoint, who asks her if this is a part of Mildred's plan. And she totally spills the real plan to euthanize Edmund in the barn to save him from the chair. And now free, he and Charlotte hop into her convertible, passing by Mildred and leaving the hospital behind. Gwen and Mildred reunite with Betsy at a hacienda where Mildred still feels like Edmund is out there. But as they're having lunch, Mildred hears news about 7 nurses being murdered in Chicago and receives a phone call from Edmund. She knows he's coming after her and that someone sold her out to him. The call ends with Edmund hopping into Charlie's convertible along with Louise, who sits in the back, as they drive off on the lonesome road. But what do you think? Do you agree with my theories or do you disagree? Let me know with a comment down below. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the playlist that's up on the channel. Until next time, have a damn good day.